there, Grateful Gang. It's Lauren here, the Gratitude Addict. Welcome to Gratefully Living the Chronic Life. If it is your first time, welcome. I come to you each week at this time, bringing expert guests, usually an expert guest, authors, doctors, therapists, people who have something to offer us on how to live our lives with intention and gratitude despite life's struggles. So, welcome to Gratefully Living the Chronic Life. I am the founder of the Facebook group Attitude of Gratitude with Chronic Pain, which is open to anyone, whether you live with physical, emotional, mental, spiritual pain. It is open to anyone who wants to find different ways and strategies to live your best life despite life struggles. So we have 8,500 members, and many of you are watching from inside the group. So welcome, AOG Grateful Gangsters. Thank you for being here. If you are watching from in the group, don't forget you need to sign in because AOG is a private Facebook group. If you want your comments and your profile picture to be used, if you comment, you need to grant them permission. If you're not watching from inside the group, you don't even need to worry about it. So I have an amazing guest tonight. She is a previous guest. She was only on in January, but our conversation about gratitude and resentment was not over by a long shot. It was one of our most watched episodes ever. And I certainly wanted to find out more. Her name's Dr. Kerry Howells, and I'll bring her on in a minute. But before I do that, I want to thank last week's guest, Dr. Lillian Yums-Bacon, who is a gratitude researcher all the way from the Netherlands. That was a fantastic hour. We aired it at a special time because of the time difference. So thank you to those of you tuning in live and for contributing. You really make each episode just give it so much energy and make it fun for the guests and for me as well. Speaking of which, if you are new here, we are an interactive broadcast, so please feel free to give us your comments, questions, anything you want. I see a comment right here. I will show you. I can put them right up on the screen. Linda Edwards is here. Hi, Linda. Thank you for being here. So I love to put comments and questions on the screen if I can. So please feel free to do so. I kind of like to have sort of a town hall feel. It is our episode for us to learn and heal and grow together. So please feel free to do so. I know you will have questions for Dr. Kerry Howells because her book, which is called Untangling You, How Can I Be Grateful When I Feel So Resentful, is, it's in the top 2 gratitude books of all time, as far as I'm concerned. Which is, I own just about every gratitude book. So it's I don't say that lightly. It's a fantastic book that you are going to love too. So thank you again, Dr. Lillian Yums-Bacon, for being here last week. Another thank you. So many of you in the group, you may have seen yesterday, one of the very first guests I ever had on the show. In fact, before I even had a show, I did a couple lives like way back when. She is a chronic pain and illness author. Her name's Toni Bernhard. She has a column in Psychology Today called Turning Straw into Gold. And I shared the story yesterday, and I've shared on the broadcast before too, that her Buddhist inspired philosophy on living with chronic pain and illness is very heavy. My message is heavily steeped in her philosophy. I'm very grateful for her. And back when we had less than 100 members of the group, I decided to reach out and email her and tell her how much I liked her work. And I told her about this little group I had, invited her to come, never expecting in a million years that she would join. And she did. Toni joined, and I was at this college football game with 106,000 people. You could not even hear yourself scream, but I screamed. I was so excited. Anyway, I could talk the whole episode about Toni Bernhard, but yesterday she gifted me with a homemade gift that she made, which, she's a mentor and a teacher and a friend to me, and I'm so grateful. So thank you, Toni, if you are watching, thank you. She's actually going to be back on the show in July. So thank you for that. What else? We have a Happy Mail challenge going on in AOG now in the group. Make sure you register with Linda Edwards if you'd like to be a part of it. And let me get to Kerry, but before that, let me just say who's coming up. It's been a gratitude who's who on the broadcast lately, let me tell you. So, and next week and the week after and the week after that is going to be fantastic. Next week, we have author I.J. McIntyre coming. She is the author of this wonderful book called The Grateful Way. She's a great person and has an amazing TED Talk on gratitude and regret. So Dr. Kerry Howells on resentment, I.J. McIntyre is on regret. So make sure you watch next week for that. And the following week, another who's who of gratitude on author Chris Schember. He's actually the gratitude expert for Rolling Stone magazine, believe it or not. They have a gratitude expert. So he has a great book out called Gratitude and Pasta, but his new book is coming out soon, and it's called Gratitude Through Hard Times: The Art and Science of Positive Change. And I've had a chance to get a preview of that book, and it's absolutely amazing. So make sure you tune in for the next couple weeks. Without further ado, let me bring on. Now, I joke all the time that my best friend is Brene Brown, but Kerry and I decided the other day, Kerry and I are best friends now. Hi, Dr. Kerry Howells. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Lauren. It's great to be back.
All the way from Australia. Last time, if you guys were watching last time, you know that we had some technical issues, but everything's going on without a hitch today. And it's such a pleasure having you back, Kerry. You know, I think the world of your work and your book and you as a person as well.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you for this great opportunity.
Sure. So as I just mentioned, her book only came out a few months ago. It's called Untangling You: How Can I Be Grateful When I Feel So Resentful? And she is an award-winning educator who has spent over 25 years researching, teaching, and practicing gratitude. And you specialize in the fact that gratitude and resentment are conceptual opposites of each other. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, so where there's resentment, you can't have gratitude, and where there's gratitude, you can't have resentment. That's just a basic thing to remember, but that doesn't mean we don't have gratitude and resentment in us a lot of the time. But it's just more when we're trying to express gratitude to someone, we'll find that it's actually really hard because we can't authentically do so. And underneath that is the fact that we're feeling resentful. So my philosophy is that we really need to work on our resentment before we can access really deep gratitude in challenging situations or with people who've really hurt us. So a really good gratitude action is actually to address our resentment.
Right. I have that written down because it's often hidden, right? Because we often don't realize. I know from speaking to you last time, I didn't realize I had as many resentments as I do. And some of them seemed very innocent to me, but a resentment is a resentment, right?
A resentment is a resentment. I really like that statement. Yes, and part of its nature is that it is hidden because we like to pretend that we're not feeling resentful because we feel shameful that we're holding on to such a small grudge when there's so much else bigger than that going on outside in the world. So we try to present ourselves and even lie to ourselves that we are positive or grateful, but underneath, resentment is kind of seething away and we don't even know it.
Yeah.
And also it likes to be hidden because that's its nature. It's kind of it becomes pathologized in a lot of ways. In some cases, we hold on to resentment for a really long time because we feel that that's the only way to be in response to a seeming injustice. So we hold on to this as our kind of statement about this injustice.
It's like they say, and I'm sure we talked about this last time too, but there's that saying that says, you know, I think it's holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's what Nelson Mandela said.
Oh, was it Nelson? I think you told me that last time too. I totally forgot that was Nelson Mandela, but it's so true because we think, you know, if I forgive this person or if I'm not resentful, then that lets them off the hook. But when reality, it's just hurting me. Right?
It's just hurting us. And so my approach is that resentment is never okay, for us to make it never okay to do the work on our resentment so that we can actually allow gratitude to really come into our lives. And let go of the pain and the suffering that our resentment's holding. But resentment's very tricky. I kind of personified in a lot of ways, because it makes us feel like to let go of resentment is making the other person right, and making the other situation right. And like that statement saying is that, yes, that might be the case, but actually we're not hurting the other person, we're hurting ourselves.
Right.
So we've got to outsmart resentment. That's what my book's all about.
Yeah, and it is, I can't gush about this book enough, gang. If you don't have it, try to see if your local library has it, or order it. But the very front of the book, and I addressed this last time too, as you can see, this is a favorite book of mine. Hence all the highlighting and the stickies. But in the very first thing in the book, you've got a chart. One side resentment and one side gratitude, and you've got the definition of each. And you kind of map out here how they're conceptual opposites of each other. And under the resentment column, you say what you list the definition of resentment as the bitter indignation of being treated unfairly. And underneath that, you say the resentment is explored here in the book more deeply as a lingering emotion in response to a shock or sense of injustice caused through broken expectations or a sense of being made to feel inferior, more clearly understood in terms of its conceptual opposite, gratitude. And I think why the last episode spoke to me and so many of our other viewers so deeply is because, you know, when you live with a chronic condition, pain, physical, emotional pain, whatever, when you live with that, there's a whole, slew of resentments that I didn't realize. You sent me, I put a link to the blog post that you wrote right after your last appearance here. And I put it in the comments if you didn't get a chance to read it. She wrote it on her website. It's called Trying to Find Gratitude Rather Than Resentment When in Chronic Pain. And you sent this to me, to kind of look over the draft and see how I felt about some of the things you were talking about. And I'm looking through it in the article. I had nothing absolutely at all to correct, but I started listing things like, oh, but wait, there's this. Oh, but wait, there's this too. And then there's this. And then that's when we're like, yeah, I think we need another episode.
Yeah. It's so natural when people are going through chronic pain. Resentment is just the most natural response, isn't it? And the thing about resentment is that it stays stuck in us, and because it comes with the sense of, all my expectations of life have been broken in some way, especially if I've been feeling like this for a really long time. And I feel really small compared to how I felt in the past, which was quite healthy and abundant with life. And it's really hard to tap into that abundance and that sense of fullness. And with that sense of inferiority, which is another way of describing that feeling, they're the two major causes of resentment that I explore in my books. So right there in chronic illness, you have really good examples of why people would naturally feel resentful. So I want to acknowledge to your listeners, if they are in chronic pain, that this is a natural response. But at the same time, this is an invitation to really look at how we can make ourselves move past it, because it's actually hurting us. So that's what I mean about outsmarting our resentment, because it feels so natural that we'll kind of sit in it, and that's how resentment makes us feel. Like it lingers and it goes on forever, and it ruminates, and so it takes away our shine and our capacity to really access gratitude. So often you can be saying, oh, just be grateful, or gratitude is great in adversity, or you can do this, and look for something that you're really grateful for, which is really great.
Yeah.
But while we've got, but often resentment is the stronger pull, isn't it? So we've got to really shine a light on this resentment, so that those kind of platitudes or those recommendations can be accessible, because we want to feel like that, but actually pulled away by our resentment.
Right. In fact, I think I pulled up a quote. This it must be in your article. I saw a quote, but you talk about gratitude being the stronger pull and how it's important for us to oh, I meant to highlight this. Just pretty much what you just said, though. It was, because they work against each other, and that it's important to really practice the gratitude in order to offset the resentment. Oh, and it also, you also mentioned something in the article about how, oh, now I've lost my train of thought. It was a good thought. I'll think of it. But, I've had just the past couple of weeks during the broadcast, I've had members say that they feel inferior because they're not always feeling grateful, and they feel like they're doing something wrong. And I explain they're not doing anything wrong. That's just we can't, we feel our feels, and they're not right or wrong. They just are, right? So you're saying that resentment is sort of the same, but we can outsmart the resentments, right?
Yeah, and I think there is this kind of strange interplay between resentment and gratitude right there, because our lack of gratitude can also make us feel resentful. Like if we're aspiring to be grateful and we can't be, we can actually fill ourselves with self-resentment. But I really want to go back further than this, Lauren, to really highlight my definition of gratitude, because gratitude it starts with a feeling, but it becomes deeper and more accessible if we think about it as an action. And then in the case of chronic pain or any other difficulties, we transfer that action into a practice. So to say, oh, I can't feel grateful all the time, none of us can do that. So we do set ourselves up for failure, and therefore resentful towards ourselves and others around us who are taking away from our gratitude, if we feel like gratitude is just an emotion, and it's not an emotion. I'm sure you've talked about this a lot before. Gratitude becomes gratitude when it's an action. And if we're just taking a few actions, a few practices every day, and I see on your Facebook page that you give people a lot of really great actions, as you do in your book. And so that's gratitude. Like, what's one step I'm taking today? That's gratitude, not feeling grateful all the time.
Right. And baby steps. And you say that, now I'm forgetting if it was in your article or in the book, but you say, taking small steps towards it and doing it, looking at it as a practice.
Yes. We can take that sense of failure or not being able to do it perfectly, and we feel small in the face of other people, especially if someone else perhaps has more chronic pain than us, and yet they're really bright and positive and grateful. That can make us feel really bad, which I think those questions are coming from. And so we're just building our resentment by comparing ourselves or not recognizing that when you're in chronic pain, just taking one step is a huge thing. As if you just decide every morning you're going to wake up and look at the sunrise, and not only look at it, but really take that in and absorb it in an action of some kind, writing it down in your journal, gratitude journal, just something, that's huge. Because resentment would have us stay in bed and go, woe is me, and the world is a really bad place, and it's not fair, and it makes us feel unequal. Resentment.
Do you think that we often harbor resentment against ourselves because we feel we deserve it? I don't know if you found that in any of your research, but sometimes we're awfully hard on ourselves, I guess, because of resentments. Now that I think about it, but perhaps that we think we caused our illness, we did something wrong. I'm just wondering, sometimes we just can't seem to get out of our own way enough to get out of the pain. I'm just wondering if any of your research has over the years has shown that.
Well, don't forget that I'm a gratitude researcher who stumbled on resentment, and I'm looking at the interplay between the two. So I'm not a psychologist only addressing resentment. So, but I have done quite a lot of research into resentment, and I think the chapter in my book that would speak to that the most would be the chapter on self-resentment. which is probably stronger and more hidden because it often starts in our childhood or starts quite early, like it becomes a pattern where we disappointed ourselves, and in chronic pain we can feel disappointed in ourselves and not being able to move on or not being able to be grateful, like I was saying before. So I think there is that sense of resentment that we can't be better than what we're aiming to be, and measuring up against ourselves all the time, not just measuring up against somebody else. So the antidote to that is self-gratitude.
Right.
And I think also to look at self-resentment, the origin of it is perfection. I think we talked about this in our last episode, but it's really good to revisit it because it's so pervasive. And so if you've got chronic pain and a sense of perfection, because I don't want to call it a perfectionist, because in my book I really want us to talk about this as something that can change. So I move it from being a perfectionist to a perfection perspective. So if we have a perfection perspective, we're just continuously measuring up against ourselves and continuously stuck there. But that can lead on to self-resentment really easily. So one of the most powerful ways to move out of perfection, I find, is to be grateful for the little things that we can do, and looking at I mentioned before, looking at the graph, and instead of looking at it as 100%, we've got to reach 100% all the time, which is impossible when we're in chronic pain. We're setting ourselves up for disaster. If self-gratitude would have us looking at the graph and going from 0 and going, wow, look at what I'm able to do. I'm a little bit more grateful today, or I'm actually expressing this by greeting my household people with gratitude. Look at me, and being grateful for that. Right. That's self-gratitude. So we've got to, I think this interplay between self-resentment and self-gratitude is a really powerful way forward.
That's a great point. And, that's why in the group, we, rather than setting a daily goal, we set intentions in the morning. It's just little things that you can intend to do. And if you don't, you intend to do it. If you don't make it, it was just an intention. And then we do 3 things you did well today at the end of the day. And that can be, returning a text message, taking a shower. It can be anything small, but anything is a win for us. And that's any kind of pain or anybody who's struggling. Sometimes those little things are monumental, and we shouldn't shortchange ourselves. There are so many things I want to talk to you about that we didn't talk about last time. In particular, our families or loved ones' resentments against us. But before we do that, I want to get to, I see a lot of comments coming in that, Ellen O'Connell. Hello there, Ellen. Thanks for being here. Walling is awesome. Thank you. Mary Benwald, I have that book. Thank you, Dr. Howells. Kirsten Blake, I read the book since last you were here. Life-changing for me, honestly. Thank you, Dr. Howells.
Good.
Kirsten. I want to hear from you guys. If you want to put in the comments, maybe give an example. Tonight, one of the things we wanted to talk about is when perhaps our loved ones or family members hold a resentment against us for living with a chronic condition. If you have a specific situation that you want to share, please feel free, or any questions about resentment and gratitude and anything like that, please feel free to add it into the comments. We want to hear from you. But I had put a poll in the group asking what questions people wanted us to ask. And one was definitely on how to deal with resentments against us. And the other one, which I know we touched on last time, but I think it's bear repeating, is how to get over old resentments, what tips you may have. Why don't we do the second one first? Why don't we talk about because we have our own resentments against ourselves, like we just mentioned. We can be resentful that we're not healthy any longer, that we should be able to do something, that, we have resentments against doctors. We have a lot of resentments, surgery's gone wrong and all that. But quite often a resentment that I know I didn't think about is perhaps family members or loved ones' resentments against us. Chronic pain and illness it's a family disease. It is not just us as much as, sometimes we think it is, but it affects everyone in our vicinity. It can affect friendships and marriages and you know, mother, father, child relationships. It affects everybody in our vicinity, and it can be difficult. As difficult as it is for us to handle, it is, I don't know how much more difficult, but it can be very difficult for them to handle as well. And so
Yeah.
sometimes we may not always know it's a resentment, but we can feel it, right?
We can really feel it. And coming back to the idea, this is a really huge question, and I do have a chapter in the book about this, but I think this really needs to be looked at really differently in the context of chronic pain. So let's do that now, because it's a pervasive thing, isn't it, that people would naturally feel resentment towards us over time. They start out being really loving, but if it goes on over time and they lose something big, because like you say, chronic pain is a family disease, I think having that opportunity to name up the state inside ourselves and what we're seeing around us is really powerful. Like just giving it a name, resentment. Because in many audiences where I've presented, they've gone, oh my gosh, I didn't know that murky, ruminating, hidden, debilitating feeling was actually resentment, because it's kind of under-researched, understated, underspoken, I think, and that keeps it even more hidden. So I have this image of a cave where you've got gratitude out in the light and you've got resentment in the dark depths of the cave. So every time we take a step out of resentment, we're taking a step towards gratitude. We're taking a step towards the light. So just by naming up our resentment and saying, oh, okay, so this person is feeling, I'm feeling resentful around my chronic pain, but I can see that it's manifesting in a really different way with this person. So what my book offers is these two major reasons why we feel it. So naming it up first, and then there's two major reasons, which is broken expectations and being made to feel inferior. So it's having the capacity to communicate, like all conflict, it's having the capacity to communicate and give language around what we're feeling that can actually take resentment more into the light. So by understanding first our own resentment can really help us understand the resentment in another person. So, oh, okay, so they're feeling this towards me. They must be feeling broken expectations and they must be feeling inferior. And how, in my languaging, in my behavior, how might have I made them feel like this?
Wow. Yeah, because I don't want to stop your train of thought, but we can often think, oh, they're angry at us instead of naming in resentment.
Naming the resentment. I mean, just whatever audience, they go, oh, okay, now I've got something tangible I can work with. That's resentment. Oh, okay, so now your book has shown me that there's two major causes. I can deal with this. Like when we're feeling it, it's just got this heavy historical pain that's kind of like and dark. Yeah. But just by shining light on it, it kind of loses its hold, and by being able to see it for what it is, it's losing its hold. So it's kind of moving more and more and more towards the light. And so it's never about replacing resentment with gratitude. I really want to emphasize that. So it's never about saying to the other person, oh, you should be grateful. You've got more health than I have. I
that's not helpful.
Group and they're all talking about gratitude. They can be grateful because they're in chronic pain, but you look at you're really healthy. Yeah. You can go out to work every day. So why are you not grateful? And yet the condition of not being able to do things with you, or having to care for you when they come home, or all of that sort of thing, is making them feel like, especially over time, you can imagine their expectations have been broken. Their expectations of what life was going to be like with you. And they feel small because they feel helpless, or we make them feel small because our resentment sends out snarls of,
Yes.
why aren't you doing this to me? Why aren't you doing that? Why can't you be grateful? Why are you being so negative?
Yeah. Why are you acting like this? You're the healthy one. You've got a body that works, and and then we think, how dare they be upset with us because we're the ones in pain. Sometimes we're not looking at the big picture.
We're not looking at the big picture. So compassion is really needed, and we might think, oh, this is going to take a lot of energy, but actually not addressing it is sapping our energy and the conflict is making us feel worse. We know that. So we're having this mantra of resentment is never okay. Can feel like another burden, but actually I really want to invite us into this opportunity for self-growth and growth within the relationships around us, so that we view it differently. And we view it differently because it is something that's formed over time, resentment. So we need to give it time to heal. So just taking little steps, one step at a time, like we were saying before, and one step out of the cave where we're actually being more compassionate to the other person. Our compassion will be really felt by them, and it can also help them now come forward with, and if we can give them the language, once we've found the language to name it up inside ourselves, if we can say to them, oh, I can really understand that you might be feeling resentful because of broken expectations. Just being able to put yourself in their shoes. I'm sure you've talked about this before.
No, not really. I mean, not like this. That's why I love having you on, because you really bring to light some really important issues, I think, that I need to hear. I know.
Okay. Yes. Oh, good. Okay. So finding the capacity just to even talk about, I know that your expectations about how our life would be have now been broken, because it looks like this pain is not going to go away in the immediate future. I hope it does. But us, and inviting them to talk about how their expectations have been broken, and feeling that broken expectations can be so healing, because they're able to talk about it and not have their resentment hidden and passive aggressive behavior, like burning the toast or or slamming the door.
I'm tearing up here because it's very beautiful. I'm thinking like how hurt our family members might feel if we were to approach that with them. It's really beautiful.
Oh, it's so healing, Lauren. It is so healing, and that it just breaks that cycle, doesn't it? That cycle of oh well, we're stuck with this. We've been made to feel like this is going to be it for the time being, and so therefore the corresponding resentment is going to be there for the rest of the life of this disease. It doesn't have to be like that. We just need to kind of and the thing is that a pill or a vacation or anything's not going to heal it, because the thing that we need to do the healing on is ourselves, and welcoming this as an opportunity to really grow the relationship, to grow the communication, to actually do things differently, relate differently. And while there's resentment, it's really hard to get well. So it'll make the other person sick because they're full of resentment, and so even though they're in caring mode, they often get sick, and we know that. And I want to go back to the oncologist that I worked with, I think I spoke about last time,
Yeah.
and how he recognized that those people who are in resentment are really hard to take care of, and those who are in gratitude are really much easier to take care of. And that's why we started this project, because he believed in end-of-life care where we were working. He believed that gratitude had a really important part to play. But he also believed that he also saw that people who are in end-of-life care, the natural thing would be to be resentful. And in the case of the carers, the natural thing would be resentment.
Right.
But deciding to do this work on ourselves first, so that we're moving out of resentment, can actually make the carer's job easier. Because and that's why your Facebook group is so crucial to this, because if we can all find in our community a way of accessing a more grateful state when we're in chronic pain, then that makes it easier for the other person not to feel resentful. But it's not the only thing. It's the first thing, because they have their own world that's been shattered. And so, yeah, just being able to name it up is really, really helpful. But I also want to talk about another aspect of this, which is where the self-gratitude comes in. Because if that resentment is being expressed in ways that are quite demeaning and in ways that really undermine our sense of self, then accessing this kind of communication can be hard. So first of all, we may need some professional help. Okay. We just need strong boundaries, which is self-gratitude around the way we want to be treated. So a person's resentment can come out in really ugly ways, and self-gratitude would be saying, no, that's going to make me sick. I can't do that.
Sure.
But what this book offers, what this work offers, is that it doesn't have to mean the end of the relationship, or it doesn't have to mean catastrophe, or even it just means self-growth. It just means, okay, so this person, I need to step up here and say, look, you can't, even though I understand your resentment, but you can't talk to me like that. That's self-gratitude. And you go, oh, look at me. Look at me. Look, I'm standing up, and I'm actually saying no to the way this resentment is being expressed. And so often we need self-gratitude in order to be able to even have the communication going.
And I've got to think, even just if we're in a situation where we know that approaching the person who's, being abusive or something like that, if we know that will go nowhere, I would imagine, and you tell me if I'm right, but I would imagine just the fact that we're able to name it and see it for what it is, even if it goes no further from that, that's got to be something, right?
Oh, it's very, very powerful. It's very powerful, because what we're saying is, I'm not going to do that. I'm breaking the pattern. And again, we're outsmarting resentment, because resentment doesn't like that. The resentment likes us to feel like this is natural. So we're going, no, I'm going to make you unnatural. I'm going to pull you out. I'm going to make you my project for a year. And you're not, and after the end of this 6 months or year period, you're not even going to be able to come anywhere near me. What amazing self-growth that is. And also, I truly believe it's a ticket to wellness, and it's a ticket to greater wellness, greater resilience, and also greater harmony with the people around us, because they as the oncologists recognize, will be so much easier to look after.
Yeah.
But getting back to the people that are looking after us, they're just human beings as well, aren't they? And welcoming them into the pattern of self-growth, but recognizing, like I said last time, and why I've got a whole chapter in the book about speaking up about our grievances, recognizing that this is the hardest thing for somebody to do.
Right. I loved when you shared that last time. It really just spoke volumes. It's very brave, isn't it?
It's very brave. So inviting your partner, for example, into this conversation may take a while. Like, none of this is quick fix. None of this is kind of like this magic pill. It's just the quick fix part of it is, I don't want it anymore. That's a really, if you finish this call and you go, okay, I'm going to work now on my resentment. That immediately brings things into light. But the process of somebody inviting somebody else to talk about their resentment is really hard, because it's hidden for them, and they want to be the strong one for you, and they feel even more ashamed, because shame is already there in a normal situation, because we want to be the bigger person. But shame is personified or grown a lot more when the person is when the person's feeling bad about feeling resentful, when they know underneath that you're really suffering. So they're really conflicted. And if we can make resentment okay for them, imagine how healing that will be. But to recognize that they're afraid to talk about their resentment. Like it comes with fear.
Of course. Wow. Again, everything you say just makes so much sense. And you mentioned in the article that I keep referring to, and again, I put the link to it at the beginning of the episode, but I will put in the show notes as well. But you mentioned about resent. Well, first you talk about resentment, and you mentioned about the oncologist and how you know there are proven studies that show that people that are more resentful have various health issues or exacerbate those health issues. And then again, on the conceptual opposite, there are numerous studies now that show the health benefits of gratitude. So
That's
when I
right.
first started the group almost 8 years ago, most people thought I was insane, and I didn't know any of the science back then. I knew it worked for me, and I knew it was a lot better than stewing in my pain. Not really, and when I say pain, I mean emotional pain, and when I say emotional pain, I now know that that is very deeply rooted in resentment for a lot of reasons. I'm resentful that I'm sick. I'm resentful that this is happening to me, somebody who's been healthy your whole life for the most part, except for the drinking thing, but we won't get into that. Just like resentment against the healthy people, resentment against my doctors. And the more that stuff was weighing me down, and the more I was fighting the things that I couldn't control, which was most of my chronic pain. There's little things I can do to make my life easier, but in general, I can't control my condition. And the more I try to control it, the more out of control I got. And you mentioned that about resentment in that article too, about how resentments are things that we try to control that we cannot control either. You said something along those lines. And it just made me think like, oh gosh, it is just like, like chronic pain and trying to control our chronic pain. Resentment, we get frustrated that we can't control it.
Yeah.
So they really work so in tandem together. It's just unreal. Kirsten Blake says, I'll share. Adult daughter does have resentments against me for getting sick and maybe even blaming me for it. I'm not in contact with her. Any way to help my self-resentment because of this? So that's tough, Kirsten.
Yeah, it's really tough.
Yeah,
very tough. I think even just asking the question is a really great way forward because you're recognizing it. And I think we can send these feelings of understanding and compassion. Now we know about resentment, we can send it wherever we are through our vibrations, we can send a letter, we can do a lot with our thoughts, can't we, about the adult daughter, because I think where we're going with this in this context, Lauren, is that we're trying to move to a position where we're equal in some way, where chronic pain can actually make us feel small, and we make the other person big. But recognizing the humaneness in all of us and recognizing that resentment is a natural thing on both parties. So for different reasons, we're kind of seeing that they're being hurt, they're suffering as much as we're suffering in a lot of ways. And so in terms of the self-resentment, I'd have to know more about why that person, Kristen, is it?
Kirsten, yep.
Why you feel that self-resentment, Kristen, but I feel that you really need to let yourself off the hook because you are doing so well and you are caring for your daughter. And I think the way forward is just to really recognize that she is naturally feeling like this, but it's kind of like a natural. I also want you to recognize that resentment is a natural state in our society, even though I really want to get rid of it. It's kind of like a natural way of being on both sides. I don't know if I've answered your question well enough, but that's a start.
Makes sense. And I'm not a therapist by any means, but I know when I was in my pain program, Kirsten, I don't know if you ever heard me say this before, but Dr. Bruce Singer had us write a letter to our pain and from our pain back to us. And like Dr. Howells just shared, just saying it out loud takes away some of its power. Perhaps maybe write yourself a letter and then throw it in the garbage or something like that, a kind letter to yourself, maybe that can release some power. I know telling our stories does, but yeah, I'm sorry that you're going through that. It's tough.
And I think also I've also got this chapter here which is called The Deliciousness of Choice, and we can actually, when we can keep on asking ourselves, am I in self-resentment or can I choose self-gratitude? And it's not like we replace one with the other, but we do have a choice here, and resentment can often take that feeling of choice away from us, and it can make us feel like, the only natural response is resentment. But we can choose out of that, and by continue, maybe sort of put them side by side and saying, what would self-resentment say and what would self-gratitude say? So self-resentment would say, look, I've made my daughter feel a lot of resentment. Self-gratitude would say, I've been a great mum. I'm doing this really tough. Look, I look at just one thing that I have with my daughter that makes it a really beautiful relationship. And because self-resentment would have it kind of would cover all that with pain and darkness. So self-gratitude brings it out into light and goes, yeah, well, there's this, and make that thing that you bring out into the light really big in your consciousness, so that self-resentment's not the predominant thing.
I think I'm frozen.
Yeah, I think you are.
Am I back? I think I was frozen for a minute.
Yeah.
Kirsten says, thank you. That does help.
Right.
Sorry you're going through that, my friend. Tough when it's your child.
Yeah.
So Mary here says, we don't have to read all this, but we're going to. The subject is like explaining my situation perfectly. Unfortunately, my older sister has always resented everyone. This includes her husband, adult children, their spouses, her grandchildren, and even me. I was her only friend. A year ago, while taking a nap, she called me. She wanted to talk. I told her not yet. I thought I said in a bit because I had already explained I was napping. She's had major medical conditions, but she always has to be. Oh shoot! I don't know if I can read the whole thing because it cut off. I think it was too long, Mary. I'm sorry. She maybe if you want to continue after WO. I mean, I know your story, but maybe if you want Dr. Howells to hear, what the end perhaps question or comment is, we'd love to hear it. Never had that happen before. She's had major medical conditions, but she's always, I know there's,
I think we've got the gist of it.
Yeah.
Just not the question underlying it. But just while they're perhaps thinking about and writing more, to recognize and again be really compassionate about resentment being really long term. And it's a really lovely example, Lauren, isn't it, of how pervasive it is, like how many people are being affected by her resentment. And again, the whole thing of self-gratitude, which is saying not now, that's self-gratitude. I've got strong boundaries and I'm going to look after myself because I really need this at the moment. I think my philosophy is the only person we can change is ourselves.
Right.
And to do our own work and watch people around us change as a result, but not to expect that of them. I think we can invite them to talk about their resentment towards us if we're strong enough, but often when we're in chronic pain, and especially for long-term resentments where it's been going for a very long time, that can be too much toxic stuff coming our way. So self-gratitude may say, no, I don't feel really strong enough for that at the moment, but this is not about changing other people. Right. This is about, even when we're talking about before about the person, inviting the person who's caring for us to talk about their broken expectations or how this has made them feel small. this is really just inviting them to loosen the hold of their resentment. But when we don't do that with an expectation that the resentment will be going away, because we're not there to change them, we're only there to change ourselves. And changing ourselves, so this talking to them about our resentment is actually our own self-growth. It's our own way of being compassionate and inviting more harmony into the situation, more equality into the situation. So
that's such a good point. You know, I often say, all the time actually, say that we can't control our conditions, the fact that it happened or anything. The only thing we can control over is how we react to it. And,
yes,
and we can react to it by, you know, practicing gratitude and opting that we want to, I was telling you before the show, that we can opt to say, I love my life more than I hate my pain. And choosing to be proactive in things towards that, such as outsmarting our resentments, right? So if you go into it thinking you're going to change your sister with those expectations, that may actually bring more resentments if that doesn't happen, right?
exactly. And I believe that we've already got our own work to do.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I haven't got time to work with other people's resentments. I've got to work on my own.
Yeah,
So,
and
so that looks like a really big burden, especially if you're in chronic pain, to look after somebody else's, or feel like you need to change somebody else's resentment. So, but you could give them a copy of my book.
Yes, good segue.
That might make them even more resentful.
Yeah, it could. Untangling You, How Can I Be Grateful When I Feel So Resentful? Again, I cannot stress how phenomenal this book is. And if you have it, if you could leave a review on Amazon for her, those reviews help. As you guys know, when I share, you know, with my books, reviews really help the books to get boosted in the search algorithm. So people that need to be finding this book will be able to find it. So if you have it and would be so kind to leave a review, that would be fantastic. Heidi says, a number of times Kerry's picture has frozen, but not her voice. We hear her, but her mouth doesn't move. Yeah.
Yeah, we have technology issues all the way from Australia. We've had a lot of rain and thunder and everything, so it's not the best. But it's better than last time.
Nothing like last time, and it's just been a couple blips here and there.
Yeah.
Oh, Mary finished the last part. Health, but she always has to be worse. We haven't spoken in a year. Yeah, I think we answered that one. Facebook user, I'm sorry, I don't see who you are. You must be from not having signed in from the group, but here's the question. I have a lot of resentment with my parents, working on it.
Yeah. And you know, Lauren, that I've got the first page in my book is about my resentment towards my mother.
Yes.
And how much that really affected all the other relationships in my life. But in particular, that really affected my capacity to feel grateful in all areas of my life.
And you didn't realize it was happening, if I remember correctly.
I didn't realize it was happening because the resentment is hidden. So it wasn't until I started recommending gratitude to my students as a way of learning and making that my research topic that I recognized, oh my gosh, I've got, you know, they were really grateful to their parents. But then I recognized that I couldn't be grateful to mine. And so, especially to my mother. And I was kind of really stuck in this. And the reason I started the book with this story is because if we want to choose one relationship that's going to make a really big difference to our ability to access gratitude, it would be towards our parents. If we are holding resentment towards them, in that sits a lot of capacity for gratitude to become more fully into our lives. So, and again, that self-gratitude might say they've abused me too much, or that I've had a lot of childhood trauma. Then I would say be getting professional help with that, or maybe it's just too big a thing to deal with. And I would say that's self-gratitude and good on you. But if there's a little bit of a light there where you feel like you can write a letter of gratitude, even if you don't send it, like my mother died 6 months after I wrote that letter. But even if you even if your mother is or father, if the case may be, is deceased, still writing a gratitude letter to them can actually help shift the resentment. And I had to start with, I couldn't find anything. I was so resentful towards my mother that I couldn't find anything until I started saying, well, thank you for giving me my life. And that was at a really deep level. It was just like right there. And from there, I kind of started crying and realizing all the other things that I was given because of that. But that was a right time for me. But I would like to really emphasize the power of moving towards more gratitude wherever we can towards our parents, living or deceased, as a kind of like a core practice in health and harmony and self-worth and self-identity. And the other side of that is that my mother, when she received that gratitude letter, she said she felt better than she'd felt in years just by receiving that letter. And there was harmony, and we hugged each other for the first time in a way that we'd never hugged each other. And I was, I was in my 40s, so that early 40s, so that was a really pivotal thing for me, and it kind of gave me something that I really wanted to put center stage in this book, as a way forward to in this whole kind of healing process. And for those in chronic pain, like, this is just my theory, if for those in chronic pain, I think that's a good piece that maybe we can explore in our next episode, Lauren.
There is going to be a next one. She's coming back.
We've come up with a topic.
She's like, you have an opening in August. Is that too soon? And I'm like, no. You come back. We can talk for 7 episodes and not be done. That's really good advice. So kind of using your parents as sort of a baseline to help you, like, because you were talking about it being a sort of a stumbling block, right? For deep, what you refer to as deep gratitude.
Yeah, I didn't realize it. It was a stumbling block for my own child, my own daughter as well, that she was feeling a lot of resentment towards me, so it was flowing down.
Oh wow!
And then even friends around me noticed the difference in my. They knew nothing about my letter to my mother and how that was being healing. But they could see that my daughter's behavior towards me was, she was a rebellious adolescent. She wouldn't mind me saying so now. And so she was really good at, her behavior towards me changed. So often when I'm often asked to go and do these, I might have mentioned this last time, when I'm asked to do these workshops for parents in schools, I get them to write letters of gratitude to their parents, because if they've got rebellious children, often it's because we are rebellious in some way, or we've got a resentful relationship with our parents.
Really?
So there's a lot to be explored there, isn't there?
Nobody can hurt us like our parents or our children, right? I mean, one hurtful word can just destroy for hearing something like that from our children, and also from our parents, who are supposed to, they're supposed to love us unconditionally, and so we can take that to heart. That can be really difficult to get over.
It can be really difficult to get over, and that's why on my book I have the ball of string, and it's all very twisted, and so being able to kind of untangle one thread with that ball of string through being grateful to our parents in ways that we weren't before, even though I know it's really difficult and very, very deep in the heart, that can be a really great way to untangle a lot of the other resentments that we have in our lives as well, because they can often be coming from that core. But I want to remind everybody that I'm not a psychologist. I'm looking at the interplay between gratitude and resentment. So if you feel that so deeply and stuck and traumatized, then this may not be the right move for you. And I just want to emphasize that, without professional help. But if you do feel like it's the right move for you, and you do feel traumatized and you do feel ready, then professional help would be a great way forward to help you kind of move forward in this.
Yeah, for nothing else, you've planted a seed for people to think about and decide if that might be something that works, you know, for them. But you made it clear this time and last time as well that, you know, sometimes you just know that it's just too toxic and abusive, and it just, you know, we need to exercise that self-gratitude, right? But
Yeah.
but in certain situations, it may just be the untangling that you need, right?
Yeah, and it would be really interesting to know in this context whether that had an impact on the chronic pain. I know that's a really radical step, but it's for me, it was so core that I just felt like such a different person when I felt healthier actually. And there's been other times when I've slipped back into resentment, many times. And one of them was that I got shingles, and it was resentment towards my husband that was at the core of that. And once I was able to unpack that resentment towards my husband, my shingles pain dissipated. Yeah. So I know this is quite unscientific and out there, but I do have this kind of experiential notion that it could be a core thing to us getting better.
I believe that. I mean, you know, through my gratitude practice, I've noticed a difference in my pain levels. I would never say it takes away pain, ever, ever, ever. But there is some scientific research, because it kind of feeds off of, for me, stress exacerbates my pain. You know, and gratitude helps to get rid of a lot of my stress. So it's kind of a, you know, there's a very real mind-body connection that I've had a lot of guests on the show talking about. But I've got to think that resentment would play a really large part in that too, or it could anyway.
Could, yeah.
So we're actually at the hour. I can't believe it. She's coming back in August. I want to hear from you guys what aspect of gratitude and resentment you would love for us to talk about next time. But I urge you all to sign up for Dr. Kerry Howells' newsletter. Let me put that up here. Her website is kerryhowells.com, and she has a newsletter. And her book, again, is called Untangling You. How can I be grateful when I feel so resentful? Oh, here's that quote I was looking for earlier. Resentment makes us ruminate about what has been taken away. Gratitude helps us see what we have been given. And remember, resentment is never okay. Dr. Kerry Howells, thank you so much for being here with us again.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure, and I can't wait to have you back again. And those of you watching live, thank you for contributing and for your questions and all that. You really make it a lot of fun. And for anybody who wants to find out more about me, you can check out gratitudeaddict.com and our group, Attitude of Gratitude with Chronic Pain. And I will see you next week. Thank you again, Kerry, for being here.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, gang. Get your gratitude on. Peace and love.